And you're in tune with AM 650 KGAB, Doug Randall, the Weekend in Wyoming program. And I believe I have Cheyenne Mayoral candidate Patrick Collins on the phone. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day.
It really is. Okay, first of all, you're running for mayor. I think you are a name that is familiar to a lot of folks, but maybe not everybody knows you. Just give us a brief background.
Okay. So I'm a local businessman. I own the bicycle station. I have for 28 years. Spent 12 years on the Cheyenne City Council. Been married for 38 years to my bride, Judy, and I have two boys, Sean and Jack. Sean's a PhD candidate at the University of Utah, and Jack is just finishing his master's University of Wyoming in finance, and love Cheyenne.
Now, you're one of three candidates running for mayor of Cheyenne. Why are you running for mayor?
You know, Doug, that's the question, isn't it? I love Cheyenne, but I think Cheyenne could do a lot better. Before the coronavirus, I was really focusing a lot on the leadership aspect, economic development, and roads. But since the coronavirus, I think that leadership and economic development part has become the most important. And from my perspective with leadership, there's just no way an organization thrives when there's dysfunction in the relationships and the management. Like I said earlier, I spent 12 years in the city council, and I love that experience. And I have a lot of respect for the office of city council. And I think as mayor, I'd work really hard to have a healthy, respectful relationship with the council members and the other elected officials in the community. I think only by working together can we get ourselves out of the financial crisis this COVID-19 pandemic has caused. So I think that's probably the most important reason. But I think the second reason is that because of the financial crisis that we are faced with, I mean, you look at all the businesses that had to close up shop, our sales tax revenues are going to be down significantly, and that makes up a large percentage of our city's budget. And then at the state level, you look at oil, gas, and coal, they're at some of the lowest prices in recent memory. And so that means it's going to be hard for the state to step up and help us. I know from my personal budget, things don't ever get cheaper, and I'm sure it's the same for the city. So for me, I think we're going to have to be able to develop our own economy, and if we're going to do that, to be successful. We can no longer depend on the state to help us out. And so that means we're going to have to become a hell of a lot more business-friendly. From my perspective, that doesn't mean we don't need standards, but we have to review those standards and make sure they work for Cheyenne. As a small business owner, I know what it's like to make payroll and prioritize limited budgets, and that's something I think I can help with. And then I think the last one that really had my focus is Cheyenne's roads. We have 341 miles of roads. They told me recently they're valued at $1 billion. And that pavement condition index, that's the rating scale for roads. We used to be good, and then they fell to satisfactory, and now they've fallen to fair. And I think I can tell most of your listeners that if you drive our roads, you can feel that they're deteriorating. And so I spent a lot of time talking with engineers, people who build roads, and they tell me that what we really need to focus on is, first of all, preserving our current roads and avoiding building new projects that are expensive until we get our pothole problem under control. But we've got to get back to the basics like crack filling, sealing our roads, and making sure that we invest our dollars will make the biggest difference. So I think those are the three biggest reasons that got me interested in running for mayor.
Do you feel the relationship between the current mayor and council is dysfunctional?
Yes.
Now, you also mentioned potholes. Of course, that seems to be the eternal problem in Cheyenne. We always hear a lot of talk about fixing it. Maybe it's not a solvable problem. What can you do as mayor that hasn't already been done? Because it seems like it's going back for years, and people always want to address it, but it almost seems like it's something that comes with our climate. What's your plan for dealing with that?
Doug, I think that's a great question, and there might be a little bit of truth to what you're saying. Of that $1 billion worth of roads, they tell me at the Metropolitan Planning Organization that we have $144 million of unfunded maintenance. That kind of reminds me of YDOT numbers, right, for I-80. And so I've really spent a lot of time talking with past city engineers. I've talked to YDOT employees. I've talked to pavement contractors. I've talked to anyone else that will listen to us. And basically, I don't think the problem is insurmountable. We're always going to have some potholes because the way we have the freeze and thaw. But if we get back to basics, one of the things, if we don't crack fill our roads, asphalt cracks. Water gets into the cracks, it freezes and thaws and creates potholes. They're telling me that you have to seal the road up. So on an annual basis, you've got to be out filling those cracks with sealant. And then in the life cycle of a road, you build a new road, you crack fill it from the very beginning, and then within about 5 or 6 or 7 years, you have to put a wear course on there, like an oil seal or a chip seal. That helps seal the road. It prevents the UV rays from coming down, deteriorating the oil, and that causes the road to deteriorate. And so you do that, and if you can keep up on that kind of stuff, then your roads will be back in those good conditions. I spoke with a gentleman who spent 12 years in the city of Arvada. They had exactly the same problem. And their roads were in really bad condition, one of the worst in the Front Range. Now they're one of the best. It took him 12 years, but working on basics, doing it consistently with a plan, they were able to get the roads back up into one of the better roads now in the Front Range. Funny thing is he works here in Cheyenne, and he'd love to do this job. And one of the first things I want to do is hire him to do it.
So you think we can do better?
Absolutely. There's probably not enough dollars, but when I was on city council, Amber Ash and I went to the legislature and asked them to change the 6-penny rules. In the old days, we were able to build new roads with the 6-penny, but they wouldn't let us do any maintenance of the roads that we had with the 6-penny. So we went to them and said it didn't make a lot of sense. And so rather than putting expensive 6-penny projects on the ballot over the next few years, I would like to see us put a lot of money into road maintenance. And then what they're telling me is once you get caught up on road maintenance, it's not that expensive. You just can't let yourself get in a hole. And so we'll go through, we'll do the sealing, we'll fix roads where they need to be fixed, and I think over time we're going to be able to get there. I'm very convinced of that.
Okay, I'm speaking with Cheyenne Mayoral candidate Patrick Collins. By the way, we are taking calls. If you have any questions or comments, 632-3323. That line is now open if you have any questions or comments. I did see an item you posted on Facebook just yesterday, I believe, about policing, relations in the community, defunding the police, and that sort of thing. Kind of summarize what you had to say there for us, if you would.
Okay. I think when you're running for mayor, you need to tell people where you stand, right? And with the whole George Floyd situation in Minnesota, it got me thinking that I need to tell people how I stand on that. Right up front, on the subject of defunding our police, I'm a no on that. I met with our chief of police. I believe he has just enough resources to do.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
We have just enough resources to do the job with our growing city. He has 111 officers maximum that he's given to do this job. But he's normally 5 or 10% down. Like when I met with him a month or so ago, he had 103 officers. They have retirements, guard deployments, injuries. So I don't think they have any extra resources. And what I'm hearing on the defunding of police is, taking dollars away from the police officers that are doing more social projects and putting them someplace else. It's my opinion that the police office doesn't have any extra resources. They're not doing those jobs here in Cheyenne. But Doug, I will tell you, I do understand the fear and anger that this George Floyd killing has brought forward in all of us, especially in the minority community. That killing was horrendous, and there's the people that were responsible for that, in my opinion, should be convicted and sent to prison. But I think the vast majority of our police officers across the nation, they're solid people. I believe our Cheyenne Police Department officers are just like that. And because of the actions of a few bad people wearing a uniform, I just don't want to jeopardize the safety of Cheyenne by reducing that police officers or police department budget.
Okay, it looks like we do have a caller. And good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Hi. Just had a question for the candidate.
Okay.
I guess your policy, how is that going to differ from the current mayor?
Well, Doug, they get right to the heart of it, don't they?
What's your response?
I think it's a great question, caller. I think that my experiences leading up to the election are different, and I think they'll affect the way that I would lead as a mayor. Maybe I'll point a couple of those out. Small business experience, being on the city council, being involved in the business community, like on the chamber board. I think the mayor runs a business, right? And in this case, it's a $50 million business. Or, it's our general fund is $50 million. And we have, I think, with all of our employees, BOPU and stuff, over 500 employees. And so I think my 28 years as being a small businessman will definitely affect me in that way. When you're in a small business, you never have enough resources. You never have enough dollars to do the things that you want to do. So it makes you prioritize everything you want to get the most bang for your buck. And let me tell you about a couple things that I think are going to be important. When we talk about the city's budget, you got to be. I think my experience has been conservative because every day I open my doors and I start my day at zero. You hope customers come in, and most days they do, but you got to be conservative because you're responsible for your employees. They depend on you. And I think most importantly, as a small business person, I'm only as successful as my employees. And I think I will work really hard to make sure the cities have the culture where our employees' hard work and their commitment to our citizens are valued. I think another thing that will affect the way I'd be mayor is my 12 years on city council. They flew by and I loved it. I was 4 times president of the city council, and I saw, I guess, the best and the worst of being in that office. And as mayor, you'll see a great deal of respect from me for those council people who had the courage to put their name on a ballot and were elected to serve. I won't communicate with them late night in text message rants. We need healthy working relationships. As Councilman Laybourne recently reminded me when we talked, that all council people are equal and they deserve respect for their office. And I think most times, or too often, people forget that the council is separate but equal to the mayor's office. And because I lived it, I won't forget it. I recognize that we can't fix our problems of today and tomorrow unless we work together. I think another thing that would probably affect me is I just got off my second term as a member of the Chamber Board. I'm currently a member of the Wyoming Retailers Board. I'm currently an Air Force Global Strike Civic Leader. And I think those relationships, those experiences, those friendships will help me bring the business community together to collaborate so we can kind of start working on jump-starting our economy. I really want to see us regain that reputation as a place that you want to do business. And I would tell you probably the last thing that I would mention is I think the job of a mayor is one of service. I'm going to leave my ego at the door. I know the things that I don't know. I'm going to be happy to collaborate with people to work together to make our city more successful and prosperous. We need to have healthy relationships with the city council. The mayor needs to have a healthy relationship with the fire union, with our outside agencies, like the animal shelter, those kinds of people. We need to partner with the CFD. We need to partner with the county commission, the development community, so we can grow. And so I think those things would make me a little different the way I would manage than our current mayor does.
Looks like we have another caller. Oh, well, they just got off the line. Caller, if you want to call back, the line is now open. Okay, I'm speaking with Cheyenne Mayoral candidate Patrick Collins. And Mr. Collins, when you were on the city council, if I recall correctly, you were an advocate of the city administrator proposal that, of course, did lose in an election. But is that still something you would favor? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the city of Cheyenne has spoken on that issue. We voted on it, and they said no. But I don't think the city manager or city administrator form of government is the wrong answer. And so what I would like to do would be to hire a chief of staff who would have those experiences, someone who's been working in a city for 10 or 15 years that would help us understand and to be able to get the city from the very first day hit the ground running. I think having an experienced professional to help advise us through these processes would be the right thing. But I'm also a believer that we voted at the ballot. The city made a decision, so that's been decided. But I would love to have a little professional help as my chief of staff.
Okay, looks like we have a caller on the line, and the caller's dog as well. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning. Since the budget is so tight, is there anything that you would cut from the budget? And I'll hang up and listen.
Well, that's a really good question. I'm meeting with the city treasurer on Tuesday morning to talk about exactly that subject. I think the thing that I would want to assure people is that while we are in a budget crisis, public safety is going to be the number one priority. We're going to pick the garbage up. You're going to have clean water to drink. Your sewer system is going to work just as it always does. If you call 911, we're going to have a well-trained firefighter or police officer respond. And even though that our parks departments had to cut back, the kids are going to have soccer fields, baseball fields, softball fields to play on. And if you want to have a picnic, most of our parks are going to be open. So I think from the public's perspective, I don't know that you're going to see a huge amount of change, but we're going to have to work a little harder, each of us, in order to be able to provide those services. And from my perspective, if we're not going to become more business friendly, we're not going to be able to work our way out of this. And so that's going to be one of my biggest focuses, is to make sure that we work together to create a culture where our business codes work for our development community.
Okay, looks like we have another caller. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Hello?
Yeah, you're on the air.
Oh, okay. This is Micah. Patrick, I have a request, actually. Since you've been on the city council, is there a way that you could delineate the different issues that the city council has voted on, and it would show what your response has been to those issues?
Do you have a specific one that you're interested in?
No, just in general, but I find it very helpful. You know, it's one thing to actually hear a candidate, but it's really nice if the candidate does, in fact, have some kind of background where we could actually see for sure for ourselves how consistent that candidate has been in his thoughts.
So, Mike, are you asking when I was on city council, or are you asking about the current city council and some of the things that they've...
No, I'm talking about when you were the city council. Is there any way that you could backtrack and bring up some of those issues and see where your voting record has been?
I think I understand your question. You know, it's...
because, I mean, that would be really nice. I mean, we're hearing you, but it's also...
Yes,
really nice to be able to have something right in front of us to really back up everything that's being said, because so much stuff in today's world is hearsay, and it gets muffled as it goes down the little chain of people talking. So, you know, if we could have something really solid to look at, that would be great.
You know,
thank you.
That's a really good a good question, Mike, or a good point. And maybe the best way for me to do that might be to outline some of those things on my Facebook page and on my website. But when I was on city council, towards the end, you know, people would come up and they'd be critical of some of the decisions that you made. I started carrying my campaign flyer with me, and I would show that to the folks and say, hey, here's what I promised I would do. And it was always funny because they would say, well, you're doing exactly what you said you would do. And the things that I was focused on back in those times definitely were trying to build that economic development. So I was definitely, you know, a pro-growth candidate, and I think my voting record would show that. When I was on city council, we built 5 new city parks. We financed or started Romero Park. We built the park in Western Hills. We built the park in La Pointe. We built the park in Saddle Ridge. And I think the one in Sun Valley were the new parks that we built. We built the Depot Plaza. We built the community house. The idea being that if you're going to ask people to come and invest in your community with their businesses, we need to make those investments in our own community. And that quality of life stuff was our way of showing them that we're investing in our community and hoping that they would invest their businesses, bring their jobs here. So I would say that was probably one of the things that that showed a consistency between, you know, the rhetoric, I guess, and the action. I'll work on that, Micah, and I'll put some of those on our Facebook page for you so that as I think about them, I'll put those out there for you to read. and then obviously you can respond back to me that way, and we can have that conversation.
Looks like we have another caller. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patrick. This is Commissioner Heath. How are you today?
Hey, I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing fine. See, I have a question for you. One of the things that the city and the county deal with together is the county pockets that are within the city of Cheyenne. And in conversations that we have had in the past, you had mentioned that you had an idea, a plan that you thought might work to help address those county pockets that are within the city. We deal with those on a daily basis on both sides of the law enforcement and fire and emergency responder page. So would be interesting to know what your thoughts are on that. And I'll hang up and listen.
Commissioner, thanks for the call. You know, she's exactly right. When I first got on city council, we heard those calls to get rid of county pockets. And so one of the very first things we did is we hired a man, actually his name is Matt Ashby, to come in and be our county pocket guru, if you will. His job was to look at all the county pockets and see what we could do to get those guys to annex in. The first thing we found out is that a lot of those city county pockets were owned by the county, owned by the city. We had our own pockets, so we annexed all those in. And then we offered to be their agent. If you wanted to come into the city, we would do all the work for you. We would do all the process. We'd do all the paperwork. We would do everything and bring those county pockets in. And I believe we brought over a third of those county pockets in at that time. I do think that county pockets are something that I'd like to see eventually go away. But also, I'm not really a big fan of forcing annexation on those folks. The city grew around them over time, and they're comfortable where they are. And what I want to do is just make sure that they know that when they're ready, we're here to take them and to help them come in. Now, we've lost a couple of opportunities. A perfect example was there's a church on the east side of town that the church is inside the city limits, but their gym and some of their extra land is outside of the city limits. And they wanted to bring that whole pocket into the city, sell off a piece of it. And our rules were so draconian that they decided not to do that. And they actually subdivided the property in the county and are selling that property as a county pocket. So we really lost an opportunity to get rid of a county pocket. And as mayor, I will work really hard to make sure that when people want to come in, that we are doing everything we can to make that happen.
Now, here's a question that I was sent on Facebook. Somebody says that when you were on the council, you were an advocate of the city purchasing the Ice and Event Center. That's been a money loser. Do you still think that was a good decision?
I did vote for that, and I guess I'd have to answer to your question, yes. I think it was a good decision. It was a facility that brings a lot of joy to people here in the community, and it has not made money, and that is disappointing. It doesn't lose a lot of money, but it loses a little money. And I guess if we were to use that same standard for everything else, we probably wouldn't have a lot of stuff, because soccer fields don't make money. Baseball fields don't make money. Greenways don't make money, but they're the quality of life stuff that make this a place that people want to live. And I guess from my perspective, what we need to do is we need to manage them in a way that if they can make money, that's great. And that would be our goal, would be to try to manage them so they break even or make a little bit of money, but recognizing that the quality of life aspect is really important, and it's okay as long as we can manage that.
Okay.
She's right, or your emailer is right. I did vote for that, and I do think if we're going to ask people to invest their businesses in our community, we have to provide them with some of the services that people would want to have. And I think having an ice and event center is one of those things.
Okay, well, unfortunately, we're about out of time. We easily could have done a full hour on this topic, I believe, and we'll probably have to have you back again in the future if you'd like to come on. But for now, that's going to kind of close it up. Any last thoughts in about 40 seconds or less?
Well, you know, Doug, it's very nice of you to have me today. It's nice to be able to talk to voters rather than just one-on-one on the telephone. This is one of the first opportunities because of the COVID to do that, so I very much appreciate it. If people want to get a hold of me, they can email me. My email is patrickcollinsformayor@gmail. I have my website and a lot of my positions, so if you want to know what I'm thinking, it's collinsforcheyennemare.com, and my Facebook is Collins for Mayor. If you have questions, you can sure ask them there.